Want to perfect your landings? Let's begin with the importance of flying your pattern speeds. The journey to a perfect landing begins way before the wheels hit the runway. It starts with managing your pattern speeds correctly during each leg of the approach. What are pattern speeds? These are the recommended speeds that you should aim to maintain throughout your descent. Each leg of the approach has its own pattern speed, and following these speeds helps you maintain better control of your aircraft. Consider the final approach. The Federal Aviation Administration suggests using a speed that's 1.3 times the stall speed. Adjusting your base leg speed accordingly is crucial for a smooth landing. The key takeaway? Consistency. Maintaining consistent speeds during each leg of the approach can make the difference between a bumpy landing and one that's as smooth as silk. Remember, consistent speeds lead to better control and smoother landings. Moving on to our second tip, avoid major power changes. A stabilized approach is a fundamental aspect of a smooth landing. It's all about maintaining control and a steady descent rate. This is where known power settings for each pattern leg come into play. They serve as your guide to ensure a smooth transition between each phase of your approach. Now, don't be too rigid with these settings. Keep in mind that they are there to provide a baseline, and it's crucial to make small corrections when necessary. These minor adjustments help maintain a constant, stable descent, which is the heart of a stabilized approach. However, it's equally important to avoid abrupt power changes during the pattern. Sudden alterations can disrupt your approach stability, making it harder to manage your descent and alignment with the runway. Remember, the key to a perfect landing is a consistent, controlled approach, and avoiding major power changes plays a significant role in achieving just that. A stabilized approach is a key factor in achieving the perfect landing. Next up, let's talk about the wind. We all know how the wind can play tricks on us, especially when we're trying to land a plane. But it's not all about fighting the wind, it's more about understanding it. Wind corrections are crucial. If you find yourself overshooting the final approach, it's often due to the effects of wind. So how do you combat this? You adjust your turn to roll out perfectly on the center line based on the wind direction. It's like dancing with the wind, leading it rather than trying to control it. But what about tailwinds? Tailwinds on base can increase your ground speed. This means you'll need to keep a keen eye on your speed and make necessary adjustments to ensure a smooth landing. Remember, the wind isn't your enemy. It's a factor to consider and adjust to. Understanding the wind direction and adjusting your approach accordingly can significantly improve your landings. Now, let's focus on stabilizing your aiming point. In the aviation world, your aiming point is essentially your target on the runway, the exact spot where you intend your aircraft to touch down. This point becomes your focal point during the final approach. Now, the key to a successful landing is keeping this aiming fixed in your windscreen. Why is this so important? Well, a fixed aiming point helps maintain a consistent descent and alignment with the runway, providing you with a reference point that ensures you're on the right path. If your aiming point is moving upward in the windscreen, you are descending too rapidly. If it's moving down, you're not descending enough. Stabilizing your aiming point is a skill that requires practice, but once mastered, it significantly enhances your control and precision during landing. Remember, a fixed aiming point is crucial for a smooth and precise landing. Let's now delve into the crosswind technique. When you're up against a strong crosswind on your landing approach, one strategy you might consider is using less flaps. Why, you might ask? Well, less flaps can help you maintain a slightly higher airspeed, which improves your control against crosswinds. You see, the extra airspeed gives you more control authority, allowing you to better manage the turbulence and gusts that come with strong crosswinds. But remember, this isn't a one-size-fits-all rule. It's important to adjust your flap settings based on the current wind conditions. So, if the crosswind is mild, you might not need to reduce your flaps as much. Conversely, if the crosswind is particularly strong, reducing your flaps further might be beneficial. It all comes down to making those critical in-flight decisions based on the conditions you're experiencing. Mastering the crosswind technique is essential for dealing with strong crosswinds during landing. Next, let's discuss the role of visual aids in landing. When you're approaching your final descent, having a clear point of reference is crucial. This is where visual aids like the Visual Approach Slope Indicator, or VASI, and the Precision Approach Path Indicator, or PAPI, come into play. These devices provide vertical guidance during your final approach, helping you maintain the correct descent angle. The VASI uses lights arranged in a specific pattern, while the PAPI uses a series of lights to indicate whether you're too high, too low, or just right. These visual aids are designed to be easily interpreted, even at a glance, and can make a significant difference in your landing accuracy. So, don't underestimate their value. Whether it's day or night, clear or cloudy, these guides are there to assist you in your landing endeavor. Utilizing visual aids can greatly assist in achieving the perfect landing. Let's move on to understanding runway expansion. As you approach the runway on your final descent, you'll notice something interesting. The runway, which was a mere speck in the distance, starts expanding in size. This isn't an optical illusion, but a natural result of getting closer to your target. This expansion is more than just a visual cue. It's a signal, a prompt for the next phase of your landing, the flare. At about 10 feet above the pavement, you'll observe the runway rapidly enlarging in your windscreen. This is your cue to begin the flare, a gentle pitch up to reduce your descent rate and airspeed for a soft touchdown. But remember, timing is everything. Start the flare too early, and you risk a high, hard landing. Start too late, and you might end up with a nose-first touchdown. Being mindful of runway expansion can help time your flare accurately for a smooth landing. Next, let's talk about where to focus your eyes during the flare. As you transition into the flare, it's critical to shift your gaze down the runway. Imagine counting 3 to 4 centerline stripes ahead. This helps in maintaining an accurate sight picture, which is pivotal for a smooth flare. Why is this so important, you ask? Well, your eyes are your primary source of information in this phase. Focusing too close can make you flare too early, causing a hard landing or even a stall. On the other hand, focusing too far can lead to a late flare and a nose-first touchdown. Neither are ideal. By looking down the runway, you're allowing your peripheral vision to guide your height above the runway and your rate of descent. This method provides a more accurate perception of your airplane's position relative to the runway. Where you focus your eyes during the flare can make the difference between a good and a great landing. Moving on, let's discuss the importance of flying all the way to the ground. When you're a few feet above the runway, it's easy to think, "I've made it, I can relax now." But this is a critical moment that requires your full attention. Maintaining positive control until touchdown is imperative. This means keeping your aircraft aligned with the runway, maintaining an appropriate descent rate and airspeed. Remember, you're still flying, and your plane is still subject to the forces of gravity and lift. As you approach the runway, smoothly transition from the flare to touchdown. This is where your hours of practice pay off. You want to land as softly as possible, like a feather kissing the ground. It's a delicate balance, but with practice, it becomes second nature. Remember, don't stop flying until you're on the ground. Even after touchdown, stay alert and continue to control your aircraft until it's fully stopped. The end of the flight isn't when the wheels touch down, it's when you're safely parked and the engine is off. Finally, let's talk about managing crosswind after touchdown. In aviation, crosswinds can pose a challenge, even after you've successfully landed. But don't worry, we've got a handle on this. When you're dealing with strong crosswinds, it's essential to increase aileron deflection as you decelerate. This technique helps maintain control over the aircraft as it slows down. Now, here's an important term, weather vaning. It's when your aircraft wants to turn into the wind, similar to a weather vane spinning to point into the wind. To prevent weather vaning, keep your wings level with full aileron deflection. This means you need to turn the ailerons into the wind, which helps keep the aircraft steady. And don't forget about your rudder. Use it to align the nose with the runway. Managing crosswind after touchdown is the final step to a perfect landing. Remember, practice and consistency are key. Each landing is a learning opportunity. Happy flying.